When you're talking Dodger baseball, the go-to guy is LA Times beat writer Jack Harris. And fortunately for us, we are on excellent speaking terms, and he joins the show once again. Jack, hey, the Dodgers were the highest scoring team in baseball, and then July happened, and they plunged to the very bottom along with a 10-14 record. What happened, and can they fix it?
A few things happened. It started with Max Muncy's knee injury that sidelined him for the entire month. Mookie Betts continued to struggle and reach new depths in this season-long slump that's kind of confounded him and the team. Shohei Ohtani wasn't as good. Freddie Freeman wasn't as good. Teoscar Hernandez wasn't as good. I mean, Michael Conforto might have been the only guy that was actually outperforming expectations in July, which is not a place the Dodgers wanted to be. So, this all factored into how they approached the deadline. It was part of why they didn't actually make a bigger move at the deadline, is because they looked at their roster and said, we have a lot of really talented players who were all off at the same time. We think that the majority of them are going to be better down the stretch over the last couple months. So that's what they're banking on. But for a team this talented, you would have never expected an extended slump as long as they went through in July. And I think it raised a few concerns about maybe this lineup being a little more vulnerable than they expected this year.
All right, Jack, a lot to unpack there. So let's go through each of those points you made. Let's start with Shohei Ohtani. Made his 8th start on the mound on Wednesday, and he was fantastic. 4 innings pitched, allowed 2 hits, 1 run, struck out 8, triple digits on his fastball. But as you've pointed out, recently, since he started pitching, his offensive numbers have suffered. So should the Dodgers reconsider him playing both ways?
I think in an ideal world, you get him playing both ways down the stretch this year. Big reason why is his pitching has been so good. I mean, he's probably, in terms of raw stuff, maybe the best pitcher that the Dodgers have. He hasn't gotten fully built up yet as a starter, but in the limited action he has had on the mound, he's looked really good. So I think the Dodgers would like to be able to use him both ways the rest of the year, but his bat is still probably the single most important piece that they have on the entire roster. The hope is that it's not just the pitching that's thrown him off lately, that there's been bad swing decisions and some inconsistencies in his mechanics and some other things that are more performance-based that he can clean up over the last couple months. I think lately you've seen a few more signs of it. He is still hitting a bunch of home runs and is on pace to lead the National League in that category. So the Dodgers are kind of the same thing with a lot of their players, hopeful that they can continue with this path for him and just get some better performance over the last couple months. But yeah, the numbers have not been as good since he's gone back to pitching, and whether he can do both could be a really big factor for the team as they get towards October.
And then there is Mookie Betts, and this is absolutely confounding. Mired in a career-long slump, and you feel for the guy because, A, he is such a great guy off the field, and he works so hard before the game, after the game, in the cage, trying to figure this thing out. But it's weighing on him. And so I guess the question is this thing fixable this season? Or perhaps, as you've suggested in your column, is he starting to maybe show his age? Because he'll be 33 this postseason.
I think you're maybe seeing a little bit of both. What Mookie has explained has gone wrong this year is that a lot of the mental cues and mechanical tweaks and things that he would do in the past to get himself right when he was struggling are not working anymore. This is something a lot of players go through as they get older, as their body changes, as they try to do the same things they've done in the past that don't work the same now. They have to find new adjustments. So I think that's part of it with Mookie Betts, perhaps on top of the workload that's gone into playing shortstop. He mentioned recently that, he really hasn't been right since he broke his hand all the way back to last year. But at the same time, the Dodgers and Mookie Betts himself are pretty confident there's a better version of himself in there. I think what you're going to see this season is somebody who, by the time they get to the postseason, by the time October starts, the hope is going to be that all the struggles in the regular season can just kind of be put to the side, that he can reset, that he can focus on being competitive, focus on putting together more quality at-bats, and just trying to be a productive member of the team. So are the Dodgers going to get an MVP caliber version of Mookie Betts as they have in the past? Probably not when you just look at how long and how deep his struggles have been this year. But this is still somebody who's really talented, who's been contributing with the glove defensively at shortstop. And the hope is that at some point over the final couple months, he can find something at the plate. But the fact he hasn't done it yet does raise a lot of big questions, not only for this season, but I think longer term in his career. And the clock's ticking, at least on this season, to try to find something that can change the narrative.
All right, let's talk about pitching. Last season, the Dodgers used 40 pitchers, and that was their all-time record. And this year, they've already used 38 pitchers. So you see where this thing is going. And they didn't exactly reload at the trade deadline, as you've already pointed out. So it appears as though the Dodgers are not only banking on guys that are injured now coming back, but also coming back better than they were when they were here earlier in the season. And I think about guys like Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates and Michael Kopech. So what is the likelihood that all that just kind of falls into place perfectly for them?
I think you got to look at it in two buckets. I think with the rotation, there's some safer bets there. Yoshinobu Yamamoto has been really good all year, is in the Cy Young conversation. We've talked about Ohtani and the fact that he's going to give them a different dynamic on the mound. Blake Snell, we haven't seen a ton of this year, but this is a guy who last year with the Giants came back from an injury-riddled first half of the season, was the best pitcher in baseball over the final couple months. And then Tyler Glasnow, who's probably the biggest wild card out of that group, but I think has shown some signs lately that he's in a good spot mechanically, he's in a good spot health-wise, and this is probably as optimistic as the Dodgers have felt about him since way back when they first acquired him last year. The bullpen, to me, is where there's more questions, not only with somebody like Blake Trinan, who's come back recently, but has gotten off to a somewhat rocky start after missing a lot of time this year with a forearm injury. You have Michael Kopech, who, like Trinan, is somebody who threw a bunch of innings in October last year, has dealt with arm troubles this year. That's always a little bit concerning, even though he's supposed to be back at the end of the month. You have Brusdar Graterol, who's supposed to be back at some point after missing all this year with the shoulder thing. And then Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates, who were struggling even before they got hurt. So the Dodgers are hopeful that all these guys are going to get back and be productive and they can piece things together a little bit and add in Brock Stewart, the one guy they did add at the trade deadline, to round out the bullpen. But I think there's questions down there. They don't really have a set ninth inning guy. Some of their depth options, if these other group of names don't come back healthy, are a little riskier. And when you think about how important the bullpen was last October for the Dodgers, it is a little scary to think about a group that might be in a very different spot by the time they get there this year.
We're speaking with Jack Harris of the LA Times. Jack, a month ago, the Dodgers led the NL West by 9 games, and now that margin is as small as it's been in the last 2 months. And the Padres are getting healthy. Michael King back on Saturday. Which team is the best team in the National League West right now?
If the Dodgers play to their ceiling, they should still be the best team, from the rotation to the lineup. I mean, they probably don't have the bullpen advantage, especially after the Padres added somebody like Mason Miller at the trade deadline. But top to bottom, if the Dodgers are playing up to their capabilities, they should be the better team. What the Padres have done as they've gotten healthier and with all the additions they made at the deadline is really close that gap. Suddenly, they have what was a top-heavy lineup before has been rounded out with some really nice veteran depth now. The bullpen, which was already a strength before, might now be the best bullpen in baseball. And like you said, the rotation's getting healthy and is probably going to be in as good of a shape as it's been all year for them. So suddenly you have what seemed like it was going to be another runaway division for the Dodgers this year, becoming a much more competitive race. You have a couple big series against the Padres coming up in these next few weeks that could really define what the end of the season looks like in the NL West for both teams. And I think for the Dodgers, it puts them in a somewhat precarious position. They want to win the division. They want to have a first-round bye into the playoffs. And what they really don't want to have happen is a repeat of 2021, the last time they were trying to defend a World Series, when the San Francisco Giants pushed them all the way to the end of the season and then ended up eventually winning the NL West. The Dodgers beat the Giants in the playoffs that year, but they were out of gas by the time they reached the NLCS. And I think this year poses a similar threat with how well the Padres are playing and with how much they added, that they're not going to give the Dodgers a lot of leeway the rest of the way, and that the Dodgers might have to keep their foot on the pedal all the way through the end of the regular season just to try to win a division and put themselves in the best position possible going into the postseason.
And a follow-up to that question, considering the fact the Padres have built a home fan base that is so good. In fact, Mookie Betts said it last year. It was one of the toughest atmospheres to play in. And considering how the Padres have pushed the Dodgers, how important is it that the Dodgers win the division and make sure they have home field advantage if those two meet?
I think it's huge. I think you only have to look back to last year and the fact that the Dodgers got that game 5 in the NLDS against the Padres on their home field, where somebody like Yoshinobu Yamamoto is more comfortable, where somebody like Kike Hernandez always thrives in the playoffs and had a big hit. I mean, those are the things that can sometimes determine how deep you go once you reach the playoffs. And I think, especially this year for the Dodgers, when you look at the relative just competition in the National League. Like if they end up in a best of 3 wild card series, which is what would happen if they don't win the division, suddenly you might be facing the Mets or the Phillies or the Brewers or, one of these teams that are pretty good. And even in a 3-game sample, if you're on your home field, that could be a tough series. It just adds to the burden that's going to be on the bullpen and the rotation and the lineup trying to, fight through things by the time they get there. So there's a reason that the Dodgers have really prioritized, especially under this current playoff format, getting that first round bye through the wild card series, getting that bye week, even though there can be some logistical challenges with it. They think it's by far the easiest path through the postseason. They showed that last year. They showed how important home field advantage is, especially in a short 5-game series. And it all just, adds to the stakes that they're facing in what has become a tight division race the rest of the way.
Jack, I want to ask you a broad question about the current state of baseball. Last season, it seemed like everybody in the world knew it was going to be the Yankees and the Dodgers in the World Series, and that's what happened. But this season, I think I could give you a guess at 3 teams in the American League and 3 teams in the National League that could get there. And I could argue that none of them would get there, right? You've got the Phillies and you got the Brewers and you got the Mets and you got the Dodgers and the Padres and you got the Tigers and you've got the Astros. Seattle seems to be on the come. You've got the Yankees. The Red Sox are red hot. What do you make of the parity that we have currently in baseball?
I think it's a sign of, the fact that the biggest brand teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees have not played up to their potential this year, especially in New York, where they've had a lot of issues. But even with the Dodgers, this is not the 120-win team a lot of people thought it was going to be. Then you look around the rest of the league, you have teams like the Cubs and the Brewers that have kind of emerged with these core groups of players that they've brought up through their system or added in savvy moves. You have teams like the Padres or the Phillies that have been really aggressive in building their rosters. And you just have a lot of different teams that have gone about building their teams in a lot of different ways, all kind of peaking at the same time. And when you have that coupled with the fact that, again, the Dodgers have been down, the Yankees have been down, the Red Sox have been inconsistent, I think that's why you saw so much activity at the trade deadline this year from teams like the Padres and the Phillies and the Mets, recognizing that, hey, the Dodgers are not the juggernaut we thought they were going to be. The path to a World Series looks a lot more open than we thought it would coming into the season. And you saw a lot of teams be really aggressive and try to capitalize on what you noted is a lot of parity around baseball this season.
All right, so we wrap it up with the million-dollar question that all Dodger fans out there want to know. In your opinion, your professional opinion, put on your turban, look into your crystal ball, and tell us the likelihood that the Dodgers get back to the World Series this season.
I would still pick them as having the best odds out of any team in the National League, just because that starting rotation is still really good. Their lineup, if everybody can get clicking again, is going to be really good. And I think the bullpen, they still have enough pieces to work through some things there. So I still think their ceiling is as high as anybody in the league. But they're going to have to flip a switch at some point and start playing a lot closer to that than what we've seen over these first 4 months. And until they do that, the competition is going to be open. The questions about whether this team can truly compete are going to be there. And it's going to be up to them to recognize that the season has not gone how we thought it was going to this point, but we're still in first place. We still have everything we want in front of us. Now, can they play up to that level as they try to win a second straight title?
Well, Jack, as I said off the top, you are the go-to guy, and once again, you have delivered. Thank you so much for stopping by the show. We appreciate it always.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right, that's Jack Harris of the LA Times, and we're back with more Sports Wrap right after this.